The times we shared. How easy it is for us to forget how to love. How easy it is for us to forget how to smile. It's easy to forget.
Papa, 你做咩啊，爸？仔，一步一步嚟，你一定得嘅。
But it's even harder not to love.
Ba, Ma.
Papa, Mama, 食飯。
仔，食飯。
Family is forever.
All right, so a few things that you may notice from that video is that starting off at the very beginning, you may notice that the son was having a lot of fun. He truly was having a lot of fun. He was out with his friends every single night. He was watching whatever he wanted to on TV. He was disrespecting his parents coming in at all hours of the night, and the dad wasn't okay with that. And, you know, we all have rules in our house. You know, our parents will set rules for us, and, you know, sometimes we don't like them, but we have to essentially get along with them. Now, something that I would like to relate that to is, you know, this idea of the journey home, that it's not so much the idea of when we head out, it's more or less us trying to find our way back to God. And so I want to go ahead and read from Luke 15 verse 11, and it's going to be the story of the prodigal son. A lot of you may know it. It says, "And he said, there was a man who had 2 sons. And the younger of them said to his father, 'Father, give me the share of property that is coming to me.' And he divided his property between them. Not many days later, the younger son gathered all he had and took a journey into a far country. And there he squandered his property in reckless living. And when he had spent everything, a severe famine arose in that country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to be one of the citizens of that country, who sent him into the fields to feed pigs. And he was longing to be fed with the pods that the pigs ate, and no one gave him anything. But when he came to himself, he said, 'How many of my father's hired servants have more than enough bread, but I perish here in hunger? I will arise and go to my father, and I will say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Treat me as one of your hired servants.' And he arose and came to his father. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and felt compassion, and ran and embraced him and kissed him. And the son said to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son.' But the father said to his servants, 'Bring quickly the best robe and put it on him, and put a ring on his hand and shoes on his feet. And bring the fattened calf and kill it, and let us eat and celebrate. For this my son was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found.' And they began to celebrate. Now his older son was in the field, and he came and drew near to the house. He heard music and dancing. And he called one of the servants and asked what these things meant. And he said to him, "Your brother has come, and your father has killed the fattened calf because he has received him back safe and sound." But he was angry and refused to go in. His father came out and entreated him, but he answered his father, "Look, these many years I have served you, and I never disobeyed your command. Yet you never gave me a young goat that I might celebrate with your friends. But when this son of yours came, who has devoured your property with prostitutes, you killed the fattened calf for him." And he said to him, "Son, you are always with me, and all that is mine is yours. It was fitting to celebrate and be glad, for this your brother was dead and is alive. He was lost and is found." Now, a few things I want to point out. So, as we can tell, anybody who is essentially rich enough to have servants or have a bigger family and have quite the inheritance to give their children is going to be pretty rich. So, the father was probably pretty well off, and so had a lot to give to his sons. And, the sons could probably easily see this. And I don't know if you guys know this in that culture, but the way that it worked was that there was the oldest brother of everybody, and then there were the rest of the siblings. And 50% of the entire inheritance would go to the oldest brother no matter what. And then the rest of it would be split not just between the younger brothers, but between the younger brothers, the younger sisters, the servants, everybody else in the household. The idea was that the older brother would take care of everybody. But when the younger brother comes along and says, "I want to take my share of the inheritance now," well, when the father had to divvy it up, he couldn't take everything that he had because what he had then wasn't going to be just the inheritance. So he split it up and he gave half to the younger son. And so essentially the older son was gypped out of quite a bit of money. And so I feel like sometimes that this story shouldn't start there. Maybe it should start a little bit before, because we all know that it's not just something where you have one fight with your parents and then the kid runs away, or you have one fight with your teachers and then you drop out of school. It's always something that builds up over time, right? And we always find ourselves in this situation where it's just building up more and more and more. Many situations, like in the video where the young son was trying to go out with his friends and the father would probably yell at him more and more and more and more until eventually he just left. He took what was his and left. And I can admit, I myself have been guilty of this, even coming from a privileged family especially, that people think that you coming from a privileged family doesn't mean that you have a good testimony or doesn't mean that you have essentially much of money at all, but the fact you've been able to come and just living in Williamson County and being able to do well in school and stuff, and then essentially wasting that. I can really relate to the younger brother here. So the first point I want to bring up is worldliness becomes wilderness. So we can all admit it to some extent that sin is fun, right? I mean, when it comes down to it, the stuff that we do that is sinful is the reason that we do it is because it's fun. We wouldn't do it if it wasn't fun, right? So when the son went out, I'm sure that he had a grand old time, that he was going out, and it was saying that he was squandering his money, and he was probably making poor investments that he thought could get him a lot more money in the future, or that he was spending it says, on prostitutes, and he said that he was spending it essentially just reckless living. We can relate to that today somewhat. We can sometimes look at ourselves and say, I'm spending all this money on trying to get like this brand new car, this the Wii U, or I'm trying to spend all this money on Pokemon Go. Guilty. But essentially, a lot of that can add up and add up and add up, and we can find ourselves getting caught in something where all this fun that we end up having, we feel trapped in the fun, and then soon the fun goes away, and then we just feel trapped. And that's what the son felt like. And when he was hired to feed pigs. Now, feeding pigs was not a desirable job at all. And it says that he was actually trying to beg to try and get some of the food that the pigs wanted. And I'm going to go ahead and just describe something really quickly. In Jewish culture, pigs were considered unclean. So not only were they not supposed to eat pigs, they weren't supposed to have any kind of contact with them. That they were considered unclean animals back in the Old Testament. It was said that you were supposed to stay away from unclean animals, only eat clean meats. They had a lot of rules about this stuff. And so that would have been a very big deal to this audience. And it means even more than just him feeding the pigs. It was him eating the food that the pigs rejected. So we're talking lowest of the low. I mean, today that's That's the people that you see on the streets, the crack whores, the people that are struggling with addiction, the people that you see that are clearly very broken, and the people that are trapped in their brokenness. And even the people that you can't see trapped in their brokenness and that are putting up masks, that way they can essentially hide their brokenness from the rest of the world, from the rest of the people that love them. And I'll admit that I've had my fair share of that as well. I've been in situations where it's been toxic relationships, both with girls and just with friends in general, when you find yourself at a point where you're going and spending the night at a friend's house, and then you wake up in the morning and you're asking yourself, why am I around these people? They do nothing but tear me down. When you wake up in the morning, or when you go home and all you feel is nothing but sadness, because you know that that's not the right crowd that you're supposed to be in. But at the same time, you feel so stuck because you ask yourself, well, these people, at least they took me in. You know, I'm this messed up individual, but still they took me in. And sometimes as Christians, we kind of reject other people because, you know, they're not as good as us, or they need to come to our level. But the fact is, we need to love people because Satan can offer things that look like love. He can offer things that numb the pain. He can offer drugs, sex, alcohol. He can offer it all. But none of it will be fulfillment. I can promise you that. The second point I want to bring up is called the waiting father. Now, I understand that starting off with a Thai insurance commercial about a dad trying to help his son walking in isn't exactly the most upbeat start. So I hope that this can put a little bit of joy in y'all's hearts. But in a lot of programs, rehab programs, this is what's known as the road to recovery. Raise your hand if you've ever heard that term, road to recovery. So it's essentially, for a lot of addicts, the road to recovery, they'll have the 32-step program, and then you're almost halfway there. But essentially, it started with the son noticing the well-being of his father's servants much more than him. Now, imagine the person who works at McDonald's making minimum wage just so that they can get by. Imagine the person who works the fields on a farm and does that for 12 hours a day just so they can get by. Now, imagine yourself looking at them and saying, I wish I had that. And a lot of times we don't necessarily phrase it as that. Sometimes we see people happy, and we can give them a little bit of hatred for it because we say, why can't I be as happy as this person, you know? Why can't I have as much joy as this person in our own broken hearts? But the fact is, it's waiting there for us. And that's exactly what the father did. Some people tend to gloss over this in the story, but you know, generally for somebody who's a little bit older, it was said, as he was still coming from the distance, the father saw him and ran to him. Now, I don't know how far you guys can see yourselves or how far you can just naturally just glance at something out of your peripheral vision that something's coming from pretty far off. But what it tells me is that the father was waiting for that son the entire time. He was waiting for that younger son to come home for so long, most likely ever since he left, waiting and waiting and waiting, filled with tears because his son is off. And he hurts himself in the beginning and he doesn't even know it. And then he feels like he's trapped in a world of hurt, screaming out, if only he knew what I had for him. But the son comes home anyway. And he decides, I'm going to become one of my father's servants. I'm not fit to become his son. And so he goes home and he says, Father, I want to be one of your servants. And so the father takes him in, and the father says, I'll do you one better. You're going to be my son again. Go get the fattened calf. Go get whatever we need to show him how much we're going to celebrate him being home. There are times that we feel like we're kind of caught in sin, and with that, we feel like there's not really much out there for us. Even we can go to church a lot of the time and feel like we're just so trapped because even in a building like this, when we feel like we're surrounded by nothing than loving Christians and brothers and sisters, we can still feel so distanced from everybody because we keep on pushing away and we keep on pushing away. For me, it was outright just a bad crowd. It was a bad crowd of friends and then bad circumstances around my life that essentially got me into my own personal hole, putting on a mask so that way people couldn't see the pain. And then when it was too much, I'd have these emotional outbursts and nobody would know where it was coming from. And people would be confused and they'd want to help me and they wouldn't even know how to help me. Then soon, becoming high off life just became a desperate search, even just for emotion, just to feel anything. Because that numbness that I so desperately craved became a numbness to everything around me. Love, anger, happiness, sadness, every ounce of it, I couldn't feel a thing. And it even got to a point that last year, around the October-November time frame, I remember my dad had called me down, and he had essentially sat me down, and he and I were just talking for a little bit, and I was asking, Dad, why did you call me down here? Why am I down here? What do you want to talk about? And even for him, it was hard for him to say that night, the night before, my biological mother had been arrested for a DUI. And it was something where you can hear about these stories all the time online, but sitting right there, it becomes so real to you. But because of how numb I had made myself, because I had made myself so numb to wanting to any kind of healing or any type of brokenness whatsoever, whether it be through God or otherwise, I didn't shed a single tear. And it was almost because I didn't cry about that it kind of caused me to call into question everything that I believed, everything that I thought that I loved, everything that made me numb and made me feel this empty sense of worldly happiness. But there is a better side to it. The better side to it is that I was an idiot and I didn't know for the longest time what it meant that God has his arms wide open. And God has his arms wide open for everybody, no matter what you've gone through or what decisions you've made in the past. I guarantee you, he's sitting right there watching from a distance, waiting for you, and he's going to run to you. It's not going to be something where he stays stationary. He's going to meet you wherever you're at, and he's going to pull you out. He did it for me, and I promise he can do it for anybody in this room, any of your friends. He can do it for any of your family. I can guarantee it. Now, I personally know where my heart lies. I know that my heart lies with God. He's the Father. He's Abba Father. He's Jehovah Jireh. He is the provider. He's the person that every single day I get this newfound sense of joy. And every single time I'm able to think of it, I'm able to think of where I came from, not as a memory of sadness or regret or sorrow, but as a tale of how far I've come and how happy I am now, how joyful I am living every single day in his Spirit, being able to know that I can go into his word or into prayer and be able to be with him. And that's something that I feel like a lot of people take for granted. But the third point I have is about the older brother. And not many people like to think of the older brother because they think, oh, he was wronged, He stayed at the father's house the entire time. He didn't do anything wrong. Well, to a certain extent, you can be right. But I think that unforgiveness is something that a lot of us struggle with. The wailing brother. The brother that when his younger brother gets home, he doesn't rejoice, right? He doesn't rejoice with his father that his brother's home and isn't taking the rejected pig slop. He's instead saying, well, I've been here this entire time. Where's my feast? Where's my love? Where's my rejoicing? And the fact is, the Father says, even for those people, that it's right here the entire time. And I think that even as Christians, that's something that we can struggle with, because we look at the world and we hate it. And then we lump the people that have wronged us in with the world so often that instead of as broken people, they're people that we need to push away. And again, I would say that I'm a victim of this, that I have fallen into unforgiveness even when I've been able to call myself the super Christian, the person who annoys their friends with how Christian he can be sometimes. But a lot of the times when you're hearing this message about salvation, you don't hear this message of you need to love others. You need to forgive others for what they've done for you, done against you, rather. Personally, when my mom was in jail, it was a lot of rough stuff going on. For about the first month or so, I didn't actually accept any of the calls that were coming. That I'd see the number come up, and then I'd immediately just decline the call. Or if I was brave enough to take the call, then I wouldn't hit 1 on my phone accepting the call, so that way my mom could talk to me again. But then eventually I did that because I felt, I'm her son, that's what sons are supposed to do. And then the unforgiveness that builds up even still sometimes when I have to think back to a Christmas Eve that I go to a jail 40 minutes north just to talk to my mom on a video screen for 5 minutes because we're trying to find one that works. And our appointment time is almost up. And then suddenly Christmas doesn't feel like Christmas anymore. And I didn't necessarily blame, drinking, or I didn't blame the people that had essentially called the police on my mother. I blamed my mother herself, completely and utterly. And I didn't want to be her son anymore. And when she got out, it was about 10 days before my birthday. And she said, I want to see you. And so I saw her for a brief lunch with her and her mother. And I had gotten home, and I remember that being one of the first times that I had ever, felt tears come to my eyes in a while, because I was on the phone with her, going through and saying, how can you see it as fair that you just get to come right back into my life? How do you see it fair that I should still love you this much? Even after all the times as a kid, when I'd be waiting on my front porch, waiting for you to pick me up. And then suddenly my dad gets a call, and then he has to be the one to tell me that mom's not coming this weekend. She's too hungover. She's tired. How is it fair that I'm supposed to love you, that you're in jail for this long, and that all of your actions have consequences and that I have to deal with those consequences? That suddenly I have to be my own mother's keeper sometimes. How is it fair that I've had to do this over the past 10 years? How is it fair? And I hung up the phone. And for about a month and a half, whenever she would text, I would delete the text immediately. Whenever I got a call, I would delete the call immediately. And the worst part is, even other people in my life would tell me that that was okay. It's healthy. You're trying to look out for yourself, But I had rejected my own mother. And I feel like that there are a lot of people in our lives that we look back at our old broken selves. We can look at the lives that we had in sin, and we can look at the people that are still there, and we look down on them. And we say, oh, that really sucks for them. And instead, we don't put ourselves back in that place where we were once that broken and hurting person. We were once that person who put on a mask because everything hurt. We were once that exact person, but still we reject them. We reject them because that's what our old life taught us, is reject everything that reminds you of your hurt. Reject everything that reminds you of the past that you are trying so desperately to forget. But I can promise you, God doesn't call us to forget. There's the old saying, forgive and forget. You can forgive somebody, definitely, and it's definitely encouraged. Forgive them. But the thing you're never supposed to forget is where you once were. Because the difference between where you were then and where you can be now is your own message of salvation. So Tyler, if you want to come on back up. So for some of you, you may be the younger brother. You may be the younger brother who's been living the life of sin. You may be the younger brother who's gone out into the world and was one with it. And maybe you're not even at the point where you feel the wilderness of it yet. Maybe you're not at the point where you feel the despair that comes with it, the despair that comes with sin. But maybe you're there and maybe you feel so stuck because you feel that there is no way out. I've been there. And it does suck. It really, really sucks. Maybe you've gone so far into it that when other people ask you, sure, you can tell them that you're a Christian, but when you look at yourself in the mirror, it's so difficult for you even to say the words, I'm a Christian, because you feel just so ashamed of yourself. Or maybe you look back on your life thus far and you just have this feeling that you know that you want to come home. This desperate, desperate need just to want to come home, back to God. I can guarantee you his arms are open for you. He has so much more for you. The reason that I picked that video is because the first time I watched it, I'll admit, I kind of bawled a little bit. And the main thing that I bawled at wasn't necessarily, the flashback of when the kid was just a child and the father was helping him walk. It was the fact that God says the same thing to us, to all of his sons and daughters. Little by little, we will make it. And he has that promise for every single one of you. That's what the entire gospel is. It's the gospel. It's the good news. It's that you can take a look at what your life has become thus far, what you've made it into, what Satan has helped you make it into. But the good news is what it can become. It can become something so great that you can't even fathom it. You can't even understand how great it is. But God has a plan for each and every single person. I know that we have some leaders here, so if the leaders want to come on up, they'll be up here to pray with you. And I can promise you, I know it's a scary thing to step out in front of people, but I can tell you this, that if you can't step out in front of other people, then how on earth are you going to be able to say this to yourself? Because so many times we can convince other people of so much, but if it's a lie, we can't even convince ourselves. So this is the first step. Arms are wide open. If you feel that this is you, just feel free to go approach a leader. They will be very willing to pray for you. Now, on the other hand, maybe you realize that you're the older brother. You are the person who was never able to forgive, that there were so many people that hurt you, and that ever since you became a Christian, all you can think about is, how much other people hurt you instead of how much you're supposed to love others. Maybe that's become you after so long that you feel yourself slipping back into sadness and despair, and you don't even know why. And I promise, arms are open just as well for you. The Father said in here, it was fitting to celebrate and be glad, for this your brother was dead and is alive. He was lost and is found. Son, you are always with me, and all that is mine is yours. His arms are wide, equally as open for you guys. So if that's for any one of you guys, during the rest of this time, if you want to come up, feel free. Altar's open if you want to pray and have a moment with just you and God.
sing this chorus together. I encourage you to come pray. I feel like if you really consider it, we probably all have something to pray about and pray for. We should all be yearning for more of God and chasing after Him. I think that's what we're here for on this earth in general, and all the other stuff is just the leftovers. It's just the part of living life. But I think we're here to seek Him, right? If you need to hear from Him, if you need a touch, if you need somebody to pray with you, come up. There's no shame in that. It's not embarrassing. It's just something you need to get used to as a Christ follower. Let's sing this chorus together. Bless the Lord, oh my soul, oh my soul, worship His holy name, sing like never before, oh my soul, worship Your holy name. Bless the Lord, oh my soul, oh my soul, worship His holy name, sing like never before, oh my soul, worship Your holy name. Lord, I worship Your holy name. Worship Your holy name.
We all stand together and sing that chorus together. Each one of us. If you're a Christian in this room, or maybe you're not a Christian yet, and you're like, I don't know all of this stuff, but we sing, bless the Lord, oh my soul. Each one of us has been brought from death to life. His arm is wide open that we can come back to Him. It's only because of His love and His faithfulness and His grace that any of us can stand here today, forgiven, redeemed, and with any hope, with any joy. As we sing this, if you feel comfortable with lifting your hands, because this is an outward expression of what's going on in our heart, of saying, bless You, Lord, for how great You are, how amazing Your love is, that we deserve to be thrown out of You, Your kingdom, Your home forever, but You've welcomed us in. So let's sing this together.
Bless the Lord, oh my soul, oh my soul, worship His holy name, sing like never before, oh my soul, worship Your holy name. Bless the Lord, oh my soul, oh my soul, worship His holy name, sing like never before, oh my soul, worship Your holy name. Worship Your holy name. Worship Your holy name.
Oh, Lord, how great You are. And Lord, I know in my life, I go through so much of my life in my own strength, ignoring You, not aware of the goodness and love that You pour out on my life every second of every day. Lord, I pray that we be more and more aware of the grace and love that You extend to us on a daily, moment-by-moment basis, and that we would praise you. We live lives of praise towards you, of a response to your great love. So Lord, I pray it's not we leave in awe of your love for us, that your arms are always wide open, that any student in this room, any leader who is far from you can come back to you, still a mess, and know that you will love them. You will love us. So we say thank you. It's your name that we all pray, and everybody said, amen. So you guys leave for school. You don't leave for school. Some of you are going to college, but you guys are headed back to school. Most of you on Friday. Some of you are homeschooled, and you've never done school anyway, so it doesn't matter. But for those of you, everybody in this room, I want you guys to do something real quick. As much as you can, just gather up in a circle, in a little ball up here at the front. And leaders, we're going to lay hands on the students and pray for them as they go back to school. So everybody just gather up. Everyone loves each other here, right? So just get close. All the boys have BO. It's just natural. They don't wear deodorant yet. They'll get it one day. Just get close. We love each other. Come on, come in. Come on, come close. Come close. All right, so you guys are going back to school, and this is another year of torture. But this year, guys, this group of GSMers, I don't know if that's what we call you, but students in this room, we're going to talk about this over the next month, but you guys have an opportunity this year to do so much more than just show up to school and come home and turn in assignments. So tonight, I just want to pray over you guys, a bigger prayer than just that school goes smoothly, but God would use you. Part of our mission statement here is we want to raise up dangerous students, that when you walk into your school, Satan gets a little worried because he knows you are going to change someone's life. You're going to love the people who have no love. You're going to share hope with someone who has no hope. We want the enemy to be scared of the students standing right here. So would you join us in prayer, leaders, if you just pray in your own way around these students. Father God, we thank you for another school year. Lord, that you've been faithful to each one of these students for however many years they've been on this earth, and you're going to be faithful again this next year. But Lord, we pray that this year would be different. This year would be a complete shift in their mindset, that they would see the needs of the students around them. They would see the needs of their teachers. They would see with eyes that see people the way that you see them. And that, Father, that as Christians, that as carriers of you and your love and their Holy Spirit in them, I pray that, God, they would go in power into their schools. Whether it's in the classroom or in study hall or at lunch or in sports or anything else, wherever they are at, I pray that they would stand out because you are in them, and it is so obvious that you are in their lives. Lord, I pray that we'd have stories, countless stories this year of how you are using these students to make an impact on the lives of their peers. So Lord, I do pray that you bless them academically, that you give them favor in that, but more than that, would they see school as an opportunity to be witnesses? That this is their mission field. This is their daily mission field. When they wake up and walk into the doors of their school, they're on mission because they get to carry your love. So Father, would you raise up dangerous students from this group right here who would do damage with what the enemy's trying to do. It would bring your love to broken places. So we ask this, we commit this to you, and it's in the name of Jesus that we pray. Amen. We love you guys. Seriously believe in you guys. And I'm excited to hear what God does through you this school year. But be blessed. Get some rest before you go back to school. And I don't know. We love you guys. Next week, can you, Sam, could you throw up the slide real quick, the out of the gate slide, everybody? We're going to post this on Instagram and Facebook. If you're on Facebook, share this. Share the image with your friends. Let them know to come out next week. Free stuff all over the place. It's going to be a blast. Food and Jesus and gift cards and fun stuff. So we will see you guys next week at 6:30. Remember, bring what you need to sit on the grass. We love you guys. Peace out. Exactly if it's Have fun Insta snapping, everybody.